The first few minutes light as they traded stories of old sets, Scorsese's relentless perfectionism, and the new crop of actors flooding Hollywood with their polished Instagram personas, laughter punctuating their words, the audience eating it up. But then Pesci leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You've spent your whole life trying to be the serious guy, Bobby. When's the last time you actually laughed, not for a camera, not on a set, but for real? And the room seemed to tighten, De Niro's jaw twitching as he leaned back, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. What about you, Joe? You've been hiding from the world so long? You come out now to play philosopher? The jab landed, a spark in Pesci's eyes as he smirked, the host shifting uncomfortably, sensing the shift from playful to pointed, the audience catching it too, their murmurs a low ripple. The exchange not yet a fight, but a test. Each man probing for a weak spot, De Niro's decades of relentless work and public scrutiny clashing with Pesci's quieter, almost reclusive years. The contrast stark but unspoken, the air growing heavier as the host tried to steer back to safer ground, asking about their families, a seemingly innocent pivot, but Pesci's grin turned sharp. How many divorces you got now, Bobby? You're the real champ at personal losses, huh? The words slicing through the room, De Niro's face hardening, his voice low and deliberate. At least I didn't vanish for 15 years, Joe, letting the world forget I exist. And the audience gasped, the tension no longer subtle, the host's nervous chuckle failing to diffuse it, the cameras zooming in as De Niro's eyes locked onto Pesci's, the older man's smirk faltering for a split second before he leaned closer. Undeterred, the conversation spiraling out of control, no longer a nostalgic reunion but a raw, unscripted clash of egos and old wounds, the kind of moment that could either cement their legend or tarnish it, and just as it seemed they might pull back, Pesci's next words hung in the air, daring De Niro to respond, promising something bigger, something uglier was yet to come. The kind of reckoning that would keep every eye glued to the screen, waiting for the explosion that felt inevitable. The studio lights seemed to burn hotter as the tension between Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci crackled like static. The audience now silent, their earlier murmurs replaced by a collective holding of breath. The host's attempts to steer the conversation back to safer waters, a question about their favorite roles, ignored as De Niro's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. You're not an actor anymore, Joe. You're a runaway, ducking the spotlight because you couldn't handle it. The words landing like a punch, Pesci's face twitching, his fingers gripping the armrests of his chair. The accusation, not just personal, but a challenge to his legacy. His years of stepping back from Hollywood now weaponized against him, and for a moment he looked smaller, almost wounded. But then his lips curled into a tight, dangerous smile. Handle it? I didn't need to chase every camera like you, Bobby, turning yourself into a circus act just to stay relevant, the crowd gasped. A few nervous laughs breaking the silence, the host's eyes darting to the producers offstage, who were no doubt weighing whether to cut to commercial, but the cameras stayed rolling, capturing every micro-expression. De Niro's jaw clenching, Pesci's hands now flat on the table as if bracing for a fight, the air thick with the weight of decades-old camaraderie now fraying at the seams, the host stammering something about their shared history, but Pesci cut him off, his voice low and venomous. You want to talk about running? You've been running from yourself your whole career, hiding behind characters because you're too scared to figure out who you are. And De Niro's face flushed, a rare crack in his stoic facade, his fingers curling into a fist, not raised but heavy with intent. You don't know a damn thing about me, Joe. Don't pretend you do. The words not loud but sharp, each syllable deliberate. The audience now leaning forward, phones forgotten, the rawness of the moment pulling them in, no one daring to look away. The conflict no longer just a verbal sparring match, but something deeper, a collision of two men who'd once been brothers on screen, their shared triumphs now overshadowed by years of unspoken resentments, Pesci's reclusiveness, De Niro's relentless grind, the choices they'd made pulling them apart. And yet here they were, forced to face each other under the glare of studio lights, the host trying again, his voice shaky, asking about their work with Scorsese, but De Niro ignored him, leaning forward now, his voice quieter but no less intense. You walked away, Joe, not just from the game, but from everyone who ever gave a damn about you. And Pesci flinched, a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, or regret, crossing his face before he masked it with a scoff. Gave a damn? You think you're some hero for sticking around taking every script they throw at you? Half your movies this decade are garbage, and you know it. The audience audibly reacting now, a mix of gasps and whispers, the insult cutting deep because it wasn't just an attack. It was true enough to sting. De Niro's recent role's a sore point in a career otherwise untouchable, and he didn't respond right away, his silence louder than any shout, his eyes locked on Pesci's. The room feeling smaller, the air heavier, as if the two men were the only ones there. The host reduced to a bystander, the producers frozen, knowing this was television gold but teetering on disaster. And then Pesci pushed further, his voice softer now, almost intimate. You ever wonder why you're still out there, grinding, when you've got nothing left to prove? Or are you just too afraid to stop? And De Niro's breath caught, just for a second, the question hitting something raw, something he hadn't faced, his hand twitching as if he might stand, walk off, or worse. The audience holding its breath, the moment stretching, precarious. And then De Niro leaned back, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't get to judge me, Joe, not after you gave up. And the words hung there, heavy with finality. But Pesci wasn't done, his eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Gave up? I chose my life, Bobby. You're the one who's trapped. And the studio seemed to pulse with the weight of it. The conflict no longer just about their words, but about everything they'd left unsaid for years. The choices, the sacrifices, the egos, all laid bare. And just as it seemed the argument might explode into something neither could walk, Pesci's expression shifted, a glint of something unreadable. Anger, pain, or maybe something else, hinting at a deeper truth, a secret, or a betrayal from their past, something big enough to shatter the fragile balance they were barely holding on to. The kind of revelation that would keep every viewer glued, waiting for the next blow, knowing this was far from over. The studio felt like a pressure cooker, the air so thick with tension it seemed to hum. Robert De Niro's last words, "You don't get to judge me, Joe," still echoing as Joe Pesci leaned forward, his eyes burning with a mix of defiance and something deeper, something raw and unguarded. Trapped? You're the one who's been running in circles, Bobby, chasing approval from people who don't even know you. His voice quieter now, but laced with a venom that made the audience lean in. The host frozen, his clipboard forgotten in his lap, the cameras catching every flicker of emotion. Pesci's hands trembling slightly, De Niro's face a mask of barely contained fury. The silence between them deafening, until De Niro shot back, his voice low and cutting. And you think you're free? You're a ghost, Joe. Nobody even knows if you're still alive half the time. The words brutal, slicing into Pesci's reclusive years. And for a moment, Pesci's expression cracked, a flash of vulnerability, his eyes darting away as if the accusation had hit too close. The audience sensing blood in the water, their silence now absolute, every eye locked on the two men, the studio lights casting harsh shadows that seemed to amplify the rawness of the moment. And then Pesci laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that wasn't amusement but pain. You want to know why I stepped back? Because I saw what this business does to people like you. Eats you alive, leaves you hollow. And De Niro's eyes widened, just for a second, before he leaned in, his voice almost a growl. Hollow. I'm still here, Joe. I didn't quit on my life. The words, a direct hit. The audience gasping, a few shifting uncomfortably as the argument veered into something too personal, too real. The host finally jumping in, his voice shaky. Gentlemen, let's talk about your legacy together. But Pesci cut him off, his voice rising for the first time. Legacy? He's been milking his for decades, taking every paycheck while I chose to live, not just perform. And De Niro's hand slammed on the table, not hard, but enough to make the host jump. Live? You call hiding living? You ran because you couldn't hack it anymore. The accusation hung heavy. The studio so quiet you could hear the faint buzz of the lights. And then Pesci's face changed, his smirk gone, replaced by something raw, almost pleading. I didn't run, Bobby. I walked away because I didn't want to end up like you, obsessed with being seen, with being remembered. And the room felt like it stopped breathing. De Niro's face unreadable, his silence louder than any retort, the weight of Pesci's words sinking in. Not just an attack, but a mirror held up to De Niro's relentless career. his refusal to slow down. And for a moment, it seemed like the fight had drained out of him, his shoulders slumping slightly. But then he looked up, his voice soft but steady. You think you're better than me? You think walking away makes you wise? It just makes you forgotten. And Pesci flinched, visibly, his hands clenching, the audience sensing the end game, the moment where one of them would either break or back down. And just as it seemed the argument might explode into something irreparable, the host's earpiece buzzed, a producer's voice cutting through, and he stood, his hands raised. All right, folks, let's take a breather. But before he could finish, Pesci stood too, his chair scraping against the floor. And De Niro followed, the two men staring at each other inches apart, the audience holding its breath, expecting a shout, a walk-off, something final. But then Pesci's mouth twitched, a faint, almost imperceptible smile, and De Niro's eyes softened, just a fraction, and in a heartbeat, the tension shattered as Pesci let out a low chuckle. You're still a pain in the ass, Bobby. And De Niro's lips curled, not quite a smile, but close. Takes one to know one, Joe. And the audience erupted, not in applause, but in confused laughter, the host looking baffled as the two men clasped hands, brief but firm, the camera zooming in as the realization hit. The whole thing, the jabs, the rawness, the near breaking point, was a performance, a masterful riff by two old friends who knew exactly how to play each other. The audience caught between relief and awe, some laughing, some still processing, the host stammering, Was this planned? And Pesci, now grinning, shrugged, What's a little improv between friends? But as the show cut to commercial, the cameras lingering on their faces, there was something in their eyes, a flicker of truth behind the act, a hint that not everything said was fiction, that the wounds they'd prodded were real, leaving the audience to wonder what was staged and what was raw. The line between truth and performance blurred, the moment lingering long after the lights dimmed, a testament to two legends who could still command a room and leave everyone questioning what they'd just seen.